It's really hard for me to decide on a piece of advice. So I'm just going to say a couple of things. And the first being be genuine and authentic. And my students, if they're going to listen to this, they're going to be like, oh, she always says that. You cannot move forward if you aren't yourself. If you're trying to be something else, if you're trying to be someone else, it doesn't work. You can get so far, and then you're going to be discovered that you're not genuine and authentic in what you're presenting or what you're doing.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the KO to Convo podcast. Got another awesome guest for you today. I mean, if you know anything about Bay Area sports television, you know we have some great talents throughout the years, but, you know, no one is perhaps as talented and as more personable as my guest here today. She goes by Amy G, but it's Amy Gutierrez, Emmy Award winner, now host of the very successful Girl, How'd You Get That Gig podcast. Amy, more or less, thank you so much for joining me. It's awesome to talk to you here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for thinking of having me on.
Yeah, so let's just start kind of, just easy. How's life for Amy G? How is everything going? I know you still live in Petaluma and things like that, but how has life been going for Amy G?
Life is good. Life is busy and a little chaotic, but it's because a lot of opportunities have started to happen by diversifying myself from the Giants more. I mean, that's how I'm most known, is how long I've covered the Giants. This is actually my first season not working with the Giants. So I had 18 years with them, either covering them for NBC, or the last 5 years I actually worked for the Giants. And that has been really just an unbelievable foundation, because it opened up so many other doors for me. So I was able to create a children's book series, Smarty Marty's Got Game, and that became a bestseller. And now I have four publications out of that. I teach at Sonoma State. I teach public speaking on a regular basis. I have added teaching newspaper alongside my husband, Paul. We're co-advisors of the Sonoma State Star, and we're very proud of our students, and our first issue just came out. So my background being in television, this is a real jump for me to go into print journalism and really get into the nitty gritty. I have been able to gain so many fun clients like Sonoma County Wine Growers and stay local in what I'm doing. Sonoma County Wine Growers is a trade association for our grape growers, our farmers, and I'm an ambassador and a storyteller for them, where we have a show on YouTube called Shoulder to Shoulder. As you mentioned, I have my podcast, Girl, How'd You Gig? And here's an exclusive, because nobody knows this yet. I have a new gig as the co-GM of the Red Pocket Mobiles, which is an all-travel team in the historic Pioneer League of baseball, known as an independent league mostly, but now an MLB partner league. And I just signed my contract a few days ago, and I am a GM. So we're figuring out what that entails, which is right now is a whole lot about uniform design and equipment that they need and getting them ready for spring training. And it's fascinating to me because it's a side of baseball that I knew existed. I just didn't know how it worked. And so it's really fun to pull the curtain back and see the inner workings of how you actually get a team on the field and what it takes and what's needed. So that's my latest. And then there's a lot of other fun clients that I'm able to take along the way. A lot of hosting. SF Film has become a client of mine, where I do red carpet interviews with celebrities. And so it's been a great time in my life to push myself outside of my comfort zone and learn.
Yeah. So Amy G goes to Amy G to Amy GM. I like
Amy GM.
Amy GM.
Yeah.
So is it like kind of weird, not going into like a season with the Giants with your normal prep that you've been doing for the past, 18 years, or are you still kind of working through that?
That's a great question. I don't feel it's been weird. I feel it's a little weird not doing things that I traditionally would do. But I think the way I would describe how I feel is relieved. Uh, I mean, it's a baseball season. Anybody who works baseball, and any sport really, but baseball's unique in the grind that it takes because of how many games are involved, and it's a daily, situation. And I think for 13 seasons, I had the same kind of routine. Every season and off season was very similar. And then the past 5 years working for the Giants, that routine of in-game broadcasting wasn't there anymore. So then it was a little more lax and less routine. So I think that was really my transition. These past 5 years, I haven't gone to spring training as many times as I had to go when I was with NBC, or obviously I'm not covering every single game. And I did that for 13 years. And I kind of look back now and think how did I do that? And the commute and raising kids and my husband working a football season. And we were always like two ships, like I'm in my season and then he's in his season. So it's really refreshing to have some wiggle room in my day. It's nice to have variety in my day. For years. And I loved what I did for the Giants. I don't want to be mistaken on that, but there wasn't a lot of variety. The variety came within like who were the new players in a season, or a storyline, or you didn't know if they were going to win or lose. You didn't know about who might get injured. You didn't know who they were going to call up. So that was kind of the variety, but you knew where you were going to go every day. You knew what time the game started. You knew you were going to be cold. And so you had a lot of things that you knew. And so I'm in a phase in my life where I really kind of feel this is my swan song of my career. And I want it to be where I'm continuing to learn, where I'm a little closer to home. When COVID hit is really when my career with the Giants, covering the Giants, shifted. I was let go from NBC. My position was eliminated. And the Giants brought me on. But it was a time that my son was a freshman in high school and my daughter was in sixth grade. And I struggled with the loss of the position for sure. Mm-hmm. But every day that I was able to be home with these preteens was that answer as to why I'm doing that, why I'm needed here, and why this happened with NBC. It's because I'm needed. I really felt I was needed at home to help them navigate through this unprecedented time. And I haven't wanted to give that up. And I know you covered my daughter in high school volleyball, and because of the change in my career, I was able to make every single game, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. I mean, the time I've been able to have at home and witness the things that my kids have been able to experience, as well as growing in my own career and pushing myself at this age, I'm 52, pushing myself to learn more and just say yes to things is kind of it's a new era for me, and I am loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the Giants real quick, obviously, you worked there for so long. You worked with some of the greats, right?
Yeah.
Kruko, the Kruk Kipe, John Miller, all those guys. And you talk about the kind of that learning thing that as you're still learning, how much did you learn from them throughout your career with NBC?
Oh, they were hugely instrumental in my career. What people don't realize is my debut was opening day of 2008. And we, at that time, had been Fox Sports Net Bay Area, and we did a name change to Comcast. It was maybe Comcast Sportsnet Bay Area, CSN. We were several different names. And so we had this huge name change, and we were really going for it. And that's when they added my position to the Giants. They had had a few in-game reporters prior to me, and nobody stuck for a consecutive season or a second season. And so there's a little pressure going in, and kind of the background was they were interested in having me do it because I was a producer. So my whole career started in news production, television news production, which I was across the street from the Press Democrat. I started at Channel 50 in Santa Rosa, which no longer exists. And I produced the morning show, which I had to be there at 2 a.m. to start preparing for that. And then I got promoted to the evening news. And then I went to San Francisco and I worked for Cron. And then that is where I made this jump into sports from news to sports when I married Paul, because he was in LA. He was at the LA Times. So I moved there and I got a job at Fox Sports Net. And that's how sports started to come into my life. But that's not my background. It's not my training. I was an athlete and I played college volleyball, but I hadn't covered sports. And so the producer in me absolutely knew a good storyline, but I wasn't on camera ready. And so in 2008, I was really, totally out of my comfort zone. And KNBR, our local sports radio affiliate, really had fun with that. And it was a very, very difficult first year for me. I had a 3-year-old son. I had a newborn baby. Gracie was 5 weeks old on opening day. And I had this very high profile position with the San Francisco Giants as their in-game reporter alongside the most beloved broadcasting team in the world, right? You're just like, oh, great. Where am I going to fit in here? And so I really took it on the chin that year. And I wouldn't say anything to anybody that I worked with. I'd just come home and talk to Paul. I'd cry about it, if I'm being honest. And then, I had this brand new baby and I had a toddler and like life is just going. And it was Dwayne and Mike who pulled me aside and let me know that they wanted me there and that they knew the kind of criticism I was under. And that conversation changed my whole take and my whole outlook on what I was doing. I really had that first season. I was like, I don't want to do this again. There's no way I'm doing this again. I was under such scrutiny, and this is long enough ago that you probably weren't alive, that there was like chat rooms and stuff like that. Like this wasn't the social media boom. This was right before it. And I would punish myself and go in and read these conversations people were having about me. And it was the worst things I'd ever read about myself. And so I was going to hang it up. And then they brought me in and they're like, we want you here and we get it. And just like hang in there, just hang in there. And they were right. Time is time is all healing regarding certain situations, not so much with people that wronged you. Like, when you don't like someone, you don't like someone. And that was probably the hardest part. It was my colleagues that were so mean about things. I could deal with the fans, but the colleagues, I was like, I just felt that was super unprofessional. And the people who were doing it are no longer there. I mean, that's like time heals because you either outlast the haters or you just get over it. And so a long way of answering your question is Dwayne and Mike were wonderful to me. They were wonderful mentors. And I do not remember a day that I went to work that I didn't laugh.
Well, I was born in '96, so I guarantee you none of those chat rooms were from me. So
I know. You weren't in there.
I was not in there. So just real quick before I go on to the next question. So is it always going to be Pac-Bell Park to you, or is it going to be
It's so funny that you bring that up because we were looking at some pictures the other day, and it was SBC and Pac-Bell before that, and then AT&T, and then so I was like, can I remember all the names of the park? And I think it was 4 while I was there. So now Oracle's ingrained. It's there. Yeah, I don't spend too much time trying to remember the name of the park.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were a professional athlete. I mean, you were a volleyball player at UC Davis, I believe.
Yeah. I definitely wasn't professional.
Or no, not professional.
Collegiate, yeah.
Collegiate, yeah. But did you kind of get some of those aspects as being an athlete, some of the things you get, like a routine or something like that? Did you kind of use those elements of being an athlete into your professional experience?
1,000,000%. I cannot express more, and that's really a huge part of our podcast, Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? In our endeavor to shine a light and put a spotlight on women who work in sports and how many of them played and how that time playing serves as a foundation for having success working in sports. And, especially being female and jumping into a male-dominated sport and industry, it was something I had in common with the players and Kruk and Kipe, who were former players. And so there was a lot that you just get. Like, you get how to build relationships. You get that not everybody's going to get along, but you got to learn how to play with each other. You get the time commitment. And so out of the gate, those were a few things that I could actually control in a position that was brand new and had no guidelines, by the way. Like, they brought me over. I had been working on the A's pregame show, producing features, and then they had me do like an on-camera segment or two for their pregame show, of which there were 15 a season. And so I'm coming from that, where I'm like, at 7:00, I'm off the air and I'm driving back home to Petaluma, and not a single person knows who I am in Sonoma County or the Bay Area. Unfortunately, nobody watched the A's games, right? So it was the best job. It was the best job. I got everything I wanted to do, and I had privacy. And then I switched to the Giants, and day one was just like, I felt like I got run over by a Mack truck with what I had to do, the time frame that was involved for the game, and a post-game report. And we had news at that time. And so, I was pulling, 14, 15-hour days with a newborn, and, the people do it. I'm not complaining about it, but just setting the scene. So it was invaluable what I had learned as an athlete. And that was the one area I never really had a confidence shake in, was my relationship with the players and the coaches. Like, I knew they had my back. I knew I had a good relationship there because I understood to a degree what somebody going through an injury was dealing with, and, the time commitment of the sport. And so I would get there before the players. I would leave after the players. So they saw that, right? And I knew things that athletes respected in people. And so I pulled those out of my bag while I was trying to figure out what this job entailed. And I don't think I hit my stride, honestly, in my Giants career until probably 2011, 2012. 5 years in, where I really started to feel more comfortable reporting on things that I thought were interesting, or kind of riffing. And I remember, like, one of the first radio interviews I did, we just talked ball, and they were like, "We didn't know that you could talk ball too, because you're making announcements in the game about injuries, or you're making announcements about the community fund or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't talk a lot of ball because we have Kruk and Kipe breaking it down, so that would be kind of dumb." But yeah, and so it was fun to see people start, like me, to be able to unveil all of my tricks, and that I was a lot more than a talking head on a popular broadcast. And also, the other big reveal that I loved was always that, I got asked all the time, "Does somebody tell you what questions to ask the players?" And the answer is no, they do not. I come up with those all by myself. So it was an interesting time to be a female in a male-dominated industry where there weren't a lot of other females doing my job. And now I love what I see. And when you go into any type of clubhouse or locker room, the numbers are a lot more equal, not quite where they should be. But, when I started, it was me.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question. Obviously, you look at the landscape now of women in sports media, not just, on teams or, females running social media or things like that, but on big time networks as well. Just kind of where overall do you see it? Obviously, it looks like it's trending in the right direction. Obviously, I would think there was still work to do, but yeah. But in terms of the overall landscape of, sports media and women in sports media, are you kind of pleased with what you're looking at?
I would not use the word pleased.
Okay.
I would use the word, what would be the word I would use? I think intrigued probably is still where I'm at. We're definitely not where we need to be, especially when it comes to, sponsorships and payment and opportunity. I think women are still dealing with the issue of if you're not in the room, is somebody going to speak up for you? And often that's still not happening. Trying to get a seat at the table is still really hard. And oftentimes, and what our podcast really focuses on is the power of women helping women. And I've had wonderful men in my life that have helped me. And, starting with my father, who was like, you can do anything you want to do. Like, you can do anything a guy can do, right? Like, that was my mentality growing up. I had an older brother, and it was a very equal household. My parents had very equal voices. And so that was always kind of around me, that I had a sense that I could do it too. And then you get to a place where you realize you can't. And so that's what needs to change. And, there's definitely progress with what we're seeing, whether that's some of the contracts coming out of the WNBA and seeing women in C-suite positions. And there's growth, which is amazing. And I know I'm part of a movement of younger women who saw me on TV and came up to me and said, I want to do what you do when I grow up. And I didn't have that. I didn't have a female sports reporter icon that I could look to and say, yep, I see what I want to do. So that is in place. There's infrastructure now, right? Like, if you can see it, you can be it, and all that kind of stuff. So I love that part. What I hate is this week, Trump calling the men's U.S. hockey team and basically making it a problem that he also has to invite the women who won gold. And you're just like, no matter where your politics lie, 'cause that's not what this is about. It's just can I swear on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just a really shitty thing to say.
Yeah.
And yet it captures how so many people still feel about women's sports, that it's secondary, that it's not as hard, that now we gotta, because, Title IX, invite them too, that is why I'm not pleased with where we're at, because we're still dealing with kind of misogynistic thoughts and people and mentalities, and you're never going to get it all out. You're never going to be totally clear of it, but you just have to keep plugging away. And I think that's really hard. I know, like, for my mom's generation, their goal was just kind of equality in general. Like, my mom couldn't get a credit card without my dad's permission. And so her fight was, for women's rights. My fight is for women's rights across the board, including sports. And so you start to get exhausted. Like, my mom to this day is just like, I'm so tired. Like, we fought so hard and then stuff's being taken away. And you kind of see that on phone calls to the U.S. men's hockey team. And you heard some guys say, yeah.
2 for 2. Yeah.
You did hear that. But you also heard a lot of them laugh. And I'm sure, it's different if you're in the situation. What are you supposed to do? The president's calling you, and there's something to be said. There's all kinds of controversy about teams going to visit this president. And Dave Roberts came out, and I love Dave Roberts, but I was very upset about what he said. I'm not going to get into politics. Well, but you should, because otherwise we cannot continue to make progress. You cannot move forward if people don't start to draw a line that this is not okay. And women are proving that they can sell out stadiums, that they are absolutely worthy of sponsorship. I mean, the blow up of Caitlin Clark, is just, it's great and it's hard for women, because the women who were before her are like, wait a minute, I was just as good as her. Like, of course you were. The world just wasn't ready for you yet. And that's what's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I read a stat somewhere where it's like over 63% of, the USA's medals at the Winter Games were won by women. Yeah. It was either gold medals or overall medals. But yeah, I kind of, I had Jennifer Azzi on the show, in a couple. Yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah.
she's awesome. But she kind of mentioned the same thing. I mean, just now, they the WNBA for the first time in their history is able to share revenue with their players. I think it's like a pool of like 8 million. And Jennifer Azzi was no slouch herself. She was
Oh my gosh, she was
incredible.
incredible.
She was
And
incredible.
that's hard. And that's part of the issue where women struggle supporting women, because the groundwork that women prior to us laid isn't always appreciated by the current generation. And you need to always, I always give a shout out to Joan Ryan, right? Joan Ryan was the first female sports columnist at the San Francisco Examiner. And I worked with Joan at the Giants for years. And I would not be here if it hadn't been for the sacrifices Joan made in her career, where she had to walk in, and I'm 5'10", right? So I have the blessing of height in a male-dominated world. It's not to be discounted, right? Like, I can look men in the eye. I'm as tall as a lot of them, especially if they're a second baseman, right? Like, I'm sometimes I'm taller, and I loved when Randy Johnson was on the Giants because I could wear heels and still, not tower over everyone. But Joan's like, I don't know. I don't want to mess up, but like 5'3", 5'4". She's tiny. And she's going into football locker rooms in, the early 80s, where a player takes a razor blade and runs it up the back of her leg. And she's just standing there like, what do I do? It's those women that my generation needs to recognize, and then Caitlin Clark's generation needs to recognize the Jennifer Azies, right? And that's how we're going to start to work together, because there's resentment when there's progress for one generation but not for another. And so that's, how we fix that, and this is just my opinion, but that is why we launched our podcast. We wanted to put our money where our mouth is and stop saying, we need to help each other. Well, that's what we do. We interview a Jennifer Azzi, and although I haven't had her on, so I'm going to ask you for her info. But you would interview Jennifer and talk to her about her career and what were the steps you took to get to where you are. So we literally lay down the groundwork for an aspiring sports professional, a female. And here's what Jen did. Here's what so-and-so did. Take the template, use it, take what you want from it, but know that it can be done. And this is how she did it. And we're sharing the story. We're sharing information instead of holding on tight because I have this position and I don't want anybody to take it from me, right? Because there's so few, and men collaborate because there's just not as much fear that somebody's going to take your job.
Yeah. Real quick, before I move on to the next thing, I can only imagine being like Marco Scudero or like Ryan Terry or something. So like short.
Yeah. I'm taller than both of them.
Yeah. So obviously, you're also, a professor or instructor at Sonoma State.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Lecturer, yeah, teaching the kind of next generation. I know one of your courses is public speaking. But in terms of like advice, as we kind of wrap up here, advice to the next generation, especially female generation of, sports reporters or sports journalists or stuff like that, that are, trying to climb up through the ranks here. Kind of what would your message be to them?
It's really hard for me to decide on a piece of advice. So I'm just going to say a couple of things. And the first being, be genuine and authentic. And my students, if they're going to listen to this, they're going to be like, oh, she always says that. You cannot move forward if you aren't yourself. If you're trying to be something else, if you're trying to be someone else, it doesn't work. You can get so far, and then you're going to be discovered that you're not genuine and authentic in what you're presenting or what you're doing. And so that to me is number one. Is figure out who you are, figure out what you're willing to put up with, figure out, what you're passionate about, and stay in that lane, because if you can find what you're passionate about, you'll be happy in life in general. And then it's some pretty practical advice, which is when you're young and starting out, drop the entitlement. I really struggle with the younger generation when they're like, I don't take calls on the weekend, or, whatever. I don't take calls after 5:00. That's not our world, right? Our world, when you're in a season, you're on. And so your job then is to find balance between social, family, and work, not cut off people who need you and opportunities that could get you promoted because you were too entitled with your time to give it up. And so there's going to be sacrifice. And I can't even count how many holidays I missed because I had a Giants game or I was traveling for playoffs or, birthdays. My husband's birthday is March 15th. I missed it almost every year at spring training. And so we decided to celebrate whenever. Like, it didn't have to be on the day. We would celebrate when we could, and getting past those stigmas of, but it's my birthday, So, like, there's a game. Like, the world doesn't stop because it's your birthday. So that's what I really try and drive into, our journalism students when I teach sports broadcasting at Sonoma State when it's available. Those are some of the messages that I try and convey, that you can work in sports, but you're not going to do what you want to do if you don't make some sacrifices and say yes. Say yes to every opportunity, even if it's not the department you thought you wanted to get into, but it's the organization you want to get into. Say yes, get your foot in the door, then get to know the people who are in the department that you think you want to work for, and then make yourself totally available to them when you're done doing your regular job. That's who becomes successful. And you can find balance, you really can. But when you're young, you don't need to, because maybe you're not married yet or have kids yet. And then when that happens, then you really got to start working on it. But you got to lay the groundwork before, and just stop being entitled. Don't ever say, that's not my job. Yes, it is.
I can only imagine having you as a boss and saying that. Oh, man. That's fantastic advice, and kind of I know you're on a time crunch, so we'll stop it there. But look, Amy G, it was awesome talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. I'm sure we'll see each other around Petaluma, maybe. I don't know.
We will. It's not a very big town.
No, it's not. But I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much.
Thank you.